Hi neighbors, I'm Scott Crevier. I represent District 3 on the City Council of De Pere, Wisconsin. District 3 is the northwest part of the city. Today is Wednesday, April 5, 2017, and I just wanted to give you an update on some of my thoughts on one of the measures that we passed at tonight's City Council meeting. That measure is in relation to how we are going to spend our portion of the stadium tax surplus. So first, a little bit of history. Here in Brown County, back in September of 2000, we voted as a county to increase or to add on a half percent sales tax and have the money go to basically the development and renovations at Lambeau Field. That didn't pass by much. That measure passed 53 to 47%, but it did pass. So we added a half percent sales tax starting in November of 2000, and the whole idea all along was once the stadium improvements were paid for, that half-cent sales tax would end. Well, that happened in September 2015, so 2.5 years ago, we stopped paying that half-cent sales tax. As it turns out, we ended up collecting as a county too much money to pay for those renovations. So it was decided that the money, or a portion of the money anyway, would be refunded to all of the communities in the county. And that was based on the size of the communities. So here in De Pere, with a population of about 25,000, our portion of the surplus was $1.2 million in change. So we got a check for $1.2 million. We got it about a year ago, and we've spoken off and on several times throughout the year on what we should do with the money. The money comes with some limitations, although they're not too bad, but there are basically three things that we're allowed to spend the money on as a municipality. One is to lower property taxes, a second is to provide debt relief, and a third is for economic development. So, like I said, we talked about this at 2 or 3 meetings, I want to say last year, and we talked about different ideas. There were a number of good ideas tossed around. We also did a survey of the community where we got some ideas from local residents and neighbors as well. So I want to tell you just a little bit about that process and some of my thoughts going into this initial thing. First of all, one of the major things that I originally wanted to set aside some of this money for was some improvements downtown to support the Mulva Center. So if you haven't heard of the Mulva Center, that is a new facility that's being built right on the roundabout downtown on the southeast corner of that where the roundabout is at Broadway and the bridge there. That is being built by the Mulva family, and the city has decided to donate that land for the project, and they are building the center there. It's going to be kind of it's like a cultural center slash museum. So I won't go into a lot of detail about what that is, but the reason I bring that up is that since a nonprofit foundation is building that, we as a city need to be prepared to support that. So we might have to put in some road improvements, some additional parking, maybe some crosswalks to keep it safe, that kind of thing. So I was thinking we should set aside maybe $200,000 or $300,000 just so that when we're ready to make those improvements, it won't sting so much. In some discussions that I had though with our city administrator, he explained to me that those kinds of improvements would typically be paid for through a TIF district. Now I'm not going to go into what TIF financing is if you're not familiar with that, but suffice it to say that I'm comfortable that there would already be a mechanism to pay for those kinds of improvements. So I kind of backed off that initial suggestion to save money for that particular project. I will mention too, in the surveys that we did of residents, now granted these are just surveys. The surveys that we sent out were just to get ideas. It wasn't like a binding referendum or anything like that, but we wanted to get ideas. I counted up almost a couple of dozen different mentions of putting the money toward a water park or a swimming pool and that kind of thing. So that's another thing that's going on in the city right now. which I'll talk about here in just a second. But just wanted to make you aware that was one of the things that kind of stuck out for me, that a lot of neighbors wanted to put money towards some kind of a water facility. So since none of us had really made any significant motions or suggestions, or serious suggestions anyway, on how to spend the money, a couple of months ago we finally decided, hey, let's set a special meeting to get the council together to only talk about this issue, and let's finally make some decisions on what we're going to do with the money. So it's been over a year since we've had it, so we really do need to get something in writing and make some decisions here. So we met on February 28th. That was the special meeting that we had, and we had just a fantastic meeting. All of us 8 aldermen were there. The mayor was there, of course, and we all shared our ideas, talked about why we thought they were important. A number of folks from the community had submitted suggestions. Definitely De Pere, which is our downtown organization, submitted a number of suggestions, and we had a really good process. We basically decided on how to spend that $1.2 million. We also found out it's actually $1.2 million and change. We found out that since we hadn't already spent the money yet, and we've been kind of sitting on it for a year, we've actually collected some interest on that, which actually increases the amount we have to spend to about $1.3 million. So that's kind of the figure that we were going at. We were deciding, how are we going to spend $1.3 million? We made all the decisions. We kind of had a breakdown of how much money we're going to set aside for the different projects, and I'm going to go through these projects here in just a second. But we did that at our February 28th meeting. At tonight's meeting, we actually had all of those numbers in a formal resolution that we approved, and now we're going to go ahead and assign those funds to these projects. So let me tell you about what the individual projects are. Again, we got a total up $1.3 million here. So the first thing that we're going to spend money on is rewriting our city zoning code. We're going to put $45,000 toward that. So we have, in the last few years, we've done some work on certain ordinances. We did some work a couple of years ago on cleaning up all of our signage ordinances. Some of the code that we've got in the books gets old. And one of those areas that gets old and needs some attention is our zoning code. So we have a master plan for the city that kind of has things laid out based on how we feel all the land use in the city should be designated. There's proposed zoning codes and all of that in there. But the great thing that I like about De Pere is that we're not tied to that. That's not our Bible. We use that as a guide. It's a very significant document, that plan. But occasionally we change our zoning code for a particular project to make it work for something new, or make it work for a new idea that perhaps people didn't think about in the past years, the city councils that came up with this stuff. So in order to keep up with the times, to make sure our zoning code matches our future plans and matches current needs, the whole zoning code in our ordinance needs to be rewritten. So we're putting $45,000 toward that. A second thing, there are actually 2 or 3 projects here that are very similar in nature, and I'll mention each one here. One is establishing a city vision and brand, and a second one related to that is a public art initiative, and a third is a streetscape project. So I'm mentioning those 3 together, that we're setting aside $100,000 for the first 2 that I mentioned, the city vision and brand and the public art initiative, and $150,000 toward streetscape project. The city vision and brand is a difficult one. This is like marketing. I mean, if you turn on the TV, any commercial you see, that's marketing. You know, McDonald's has a pretty big marketing budget, right? Municipalities don't necessarily do that kind of a thing. But make no mistake, this is a competitive world. We need to be competitive as a city. We need to have amenities in our city that draw in people, not just for businesses, which of course provides economic benefit, but also draws in people who want to live here and establish roots in our city. We have to have a city that's appealing to young adults, young professionals, young families, We can't just sit back as older residents of the city and just say, nope, everything's going great. So when you're not in marketing, I'm not in marketing, I'm into technology. When you're not in marketing, it's hard to understand marketing. But one thing I do understand about marketing is that I don't know enough to do this, but I do know enough that we have to put some money and effort toward branding our city. We need to be able to attract businesses. We need to have an identity. We need to be able to tell folks what makes us better, what sets us apart from other municipalities like us. If there's a business that's looking to establish roots somewhere or to move to a larger facility, we need to have a vision that shows, that tells our story and shows businesses, this is why you should come to De Pere. So in any case, I don't know exactly how that's going to go. Again, I don't know a lot about marketing, but I do know we've got to do something about that. So we're going to set aside $100,000 to pay for that. A public art initiative, another $100,000. This is to do some things. You might have seen some other cities that have done this where they have art displays and things downtown. That's similar to what we're going to do. I don't know that we're going to only focus on downtown. I think there are some other areas of our city besides downtown where we need to do something. For example, if you're coming in off the highway, maybe there should be some art sculptures and things like that. So anyway, we're going to set aside $100,000 of this tax surplus for that. Streetscape project is real similar. That has more to do with landscaping and those kinds of things that you might do in on the streets. So all of that, those monies there total almost $400,000 that we're going to put towards the branding and art and all that. Let me just say too, these are the kinds of things that I believe if we were to sit down and as we hammer out our budget every year, I don't think these things would make a budget. We would be looking at other things like good pay and benefits for our city employees. We'd be looking at things like spending money on an ambulance, those kinds of things. And I just don't think we'd be budgeting for the kinds of things that I just mentioned. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to spend money, spend this surplus on these kinds of things, because I just don't think they'll make it into a budget. And therefore, I don't think we'd ever do these kinds of things. So I think our city's going to benefit greatly, especially our downtown area and our business area. So two other related things we decided to spend money on is $200,000 toward the design of an aquatic center. So that's another hot topic in the city these days. We have two traditional box pools in De Pere, one on each side of the river. Those pools are aging, many decades old. After all the income that we get from people swimming in those pools, each pool is costing us $100,000 a year. So we need to replace them. I won't go into all that in a lot of detail because that's another topic. But we have decided that we're going to take down both of those pools and build a single aquatic center at VFW Park. So we've made that decision. We've chosen the location. Our next step is to get into the design and then, of course, build the thing. So we're setting aside $200,000 to help pay for that design. We're also going to set aside $300,000 to build a splash pad at Legion Park on the east side. So again, it was decided, this was kind of a contentious thing, but it was decided to build the aquatic center at VFW Park on the west side. That made the most sense based on the facilities, based on the amount of parking that we have there, the land that we have available. The problem with doing that is that means the east side and the Legion Park community and that neighborhood's going to be without a pool now. So what I like about setting aside money for a splash pad is that Legion Park will have a splash pad. It's not going to be a full pool, of course, but it will be a nice facility where kids in the neighborhood can go out and get wet in the summertime and have a good time. So those two things together are about $500,000. The last section are additional park amenities for two parks in the city. So Southwest Park, we're going to put $80,000 toward playground equipment. If you're familiar with Southwest Park, there are soccer fields and baseball diamonds there. We're going to put some decent playground equipment there too. That's a good growing part of the city. A lot of families living out there, and so that I'm sure that'll be a welcome addition for folks that live in that area. And then the remaining money will go to two things at Voyager Park, which is our downtown park on the river. One thing, we're going to spend $125,000 and build a small amphitheater there. and also a couple $100,000 toward more playground equipment there and updated playground equipment. One of the reasons I really like putting this money toward parks, the Southwest Park that I mentioned, Voyager Park, the aquatic facilities and that, is that these are amenities, these are things that we can use this money for that the entire city will benefit from. There were some ideas floating around that, hey, we should just give a discount on our property taxes at the end of the year. Well, that sounds like it might be fair. The only problem with that is that only hits people who own property. This is a surplus of sales tax that was paid. So everyone in the county contributed to this. Visitors even contributed to this. But I like the fact that we're spending it on parks because everyone's going to be able to benefit from this money. Whether you own property or not, whether you're renting in the city, you'll benefit from it. So those improvements at Voyager Park, I like the amphitheater idea because that can provide a small venue for outdoor concerts in the summertime, maybe have high school choirs or bands or those kinds of things. And those are the kinds of events that attract people to our city. So again, those three things, Southwest Park, Playground, Voyager Park Amphitheater, and Voyager Park Playground equipment, those total $405,000. So all of the things that I mentioned do total $1.3 million. I'm real excited about this. One other thing I just wanted to mention too is that we had a lot of discussion about whether we should just use this money to pay down debt. We can pay down debt, and that sounds like a great idea. It sounds like, hey, we've got over $1 million here. If we put that towards something and that means we have to borrow less money, that'd be great for everybody, right? And I don't disagree with that concept. The problem is I just don't think the money would directly affect enough people. Paying down debt and not borrowing money, again, affects owners of property, which, we feel that on our property taxes. It doesn't necessarily directly affect renters in the city and other people who come to our city to use city facilities. So I'm glad that we're spending, of this $1.3 million, we're putting basically, $905,000 into parks. And the other $395,000 is going into the zoning code and the rebranding and the art and all that kind of thing. So I think those kinds of things will be good for attracting businesses. Ultimately, all of these things together are going to make our city more appealing. We've got to. This is a tough world out there. We're in competition with all of our neighbors. There are people who leave De Pere to go to other cities because of the amenities that they have. There are people who are looking to locate or buy a new house or build a house, and they choose other cities besides De Pere. We're doing pretty well in De Pere. I'm not trying to make this sound like it's gloom and doom here, but we have this opportunity with this stadium tax surplus to do some things that will help solidify us for the future. So that's the reasons that I voted in favor of all this. Just for the record, the vote tonight, there are 8 of us alderpersons, so the vote passed 5-1, which is only 6 of us, so let me explain that. The 5 who voted in favor of it were alderpersons Boyd, Carpenter, Donovan, Rash, and myself. Alderperson Rafferty voted against this. She had some concerns. She had what I thought were valid concerns. I just disagreed on the priority of them, but she had Alderperson Rafferty had some concerns about the fact that we should be using this money mostly to pay down debt. So she voted nay. Alderperson Jennings abstained. I believe that's because of his role on the definitely De Pere in the downtown community, so he abstained. Alderperson Lewick was not at the meeting tonight. He was absent. He was at the meeting when we actually decided all these numbers, so he participated. He just wasn't there when we did this final vote tonight. So it did pass with 5 of us voting aye. So I'm really excited. We're finally deciding what to do with our money, and I'm excited to see these improvements, especially in the parks. So thanks for watching. I hope to keep in touch by providing more videos in the future. Take care.